Hi, everybody. Welcome to Eating Peace this week. My name is Grace Bell, and just in case you're here for the first time, I offer programs in the Eating Peace process, studying mindfully in deep ways how to work with our relationship to food and eating and the actions we take and consuming matter in this world known as food and the process of eating itself and understanding why it becomes off balance or what's going on in the moments when we feel compulsion or craving or move in a way that feels uncomfortable for our bodies and wind up overweight and heavy or feeling sick or feeling off and out of balance. What is that? What is that at the deepest level? This can be something that people for millennium have wanted to address when it comes to eating and food, but also in all kinds of areas. Watching this mind and how it works, and then how, because of what we're believing and thinking, we wind up feeling certain ways and we act and behave in a certain manner, sort of based on some of the simple ideas about the order of creation: think, feel, act, have. I think, and then I feel based on what I think. I act like how I feel and think, and then the results I have are based on all of those things put together, but they all happen so fast. What I wanted to speak to today was something that has come up as a question for several people lately. One person that's working closely in the eating peace process, which is underway right now, 5-month program, just part of the year, but through the winter, this amazing time of winter. And this person was sharing, and I interestingly got a couple of other individual comments or emails from people around deprivation, the experience of deprivation, and how troubling and difficult and painful it is to feel deprived, which is very much a part of a dieting mentality, a controlling mentality where I'm going to limit based on numbers and data and ideas outside of myself, which isn't ever wrong to do. Sometimes it's all you can work with is that, because your mind is so very confused and your feelings are so very confused. But so certainly nothing wrong with it. It's incredible the science that is offered in nutrition and eating and wholeness in that particular way. We're not eliminating that, but that when we've experienced a diet mentality, an idea, a stand, a perspective that is around diet, that is, I must eliminate, I must control input, I must make sure that I don't go over a certain amount. I cannot trust myself. I cannot be trusted to do what serves my own best interest. We almost take these binges or compulsions or overdoing it or our attitude and just want to shove those aside. I need to control with willpower what it is I'm doing with food and eating and follow a diet plan. Diet, though, not necessarily a food plan that supports me, that is kind and loving and nurturing, but something that is got scarcity in it, or I at least feel very scarce when I think about it. This is really tricky because there are certain foods that don't work with some people's bodies at all. And they find that if they even just start to eat them, they don't feel so good. And if they eat a lot of them, they feel really awful. But it never really is a great outcome. Maybe that first little taste on the tongue is interesting and desirable, but nothing else really is. So this is a fine balance, to find for yourself what not depriving yourself looks like. And it can change over time. It certainly has for me. I think if my mother had said to eat a piece of fruit when I was a teenager and first beginning to have compulsive eating issues and fears and an awkward relationship with food and eating and my body kind of was a key to starting it all. When she had ideas or told me things like eat a piece of fruit when I'm hungry, I felt almost rage, very deprived, very upset about that. No eating at all until the next meal. And of course, that was way off balance, and it had to do with so much else besides the food and eating, and about feeling deprived in far other areas like love and attention and recognition and freedom to choose and be the way I actually was and respond or speak the way I wanted to speak or make requests. So there's a whole world of this, but let's look at just only deprivation today because I thought this was powerful to bring up. Somebody was sharing that she felt panicked about being deprived if saying no to certain foods. You know, she's aware she really wants to say no to that processed food. There really isn't any good nutritional value in it. But she feels like panicked about the deprivation that she may or may not experience. Actually, pretty sure that she will experience it and that it'll be too hard to handle, too painful, too much. This is a great thing to bring to inquiry. So this isn't about, like making sure everything is just as easy as possible at all times, 100% of the time. That isn't even realistic. That isn't possible. There's going to be emotional pain in life and loss and movement, people coming and going, things changing, things being surprise and shocking, and then relaxed and joyful. The full spectrum of life is what we all get to experience. The same with food and eating. So let's look at that simple thought. It's a deep underlying belief, and it can really bump you up against like sort of a stuck point, to believe that if I say no to a certain food, I will be in incredible pain. I will suffer more than I'll suffer if I just say yes to the thing and eat it. I'll suffer more. Let's look at that using the work of Byron Katie and those awesome, powerful questions. All right? I'm saying no to this favorite food that I'm just sure is so favorite and that I love so much and that it's hard to live without. Those are all things you can also question, right? Cannot eat that food. I'm saying no to it. Feels really hard, devastating, difficult. Let yourself go ahead and see instead of immediately coming in with a solution or a strategy to chop down that way of thinking, the one that's worried about being deprived. Sometimes there'll be this strategy to come in and say, what's wrong with you? Are you crazy? All it is saying no to a piece of bread or, a bite of cake. Just go ahead and eat it. It doesn't matter. What a stupid thing to worry about. We're not going to listen to that voice either. That's just sort of part of the whole, I don't know, it's like a violent sort of sensation with language and movement and thought and direction and will and control. It's got a sharpness and a bite to it that isn't supportive and loving. So we don't need to go there either when it comes to feeling worried about being deprived. We're just going to hold this fearful place in us that thinks that if we eliminate something, even forever, we are going to suffer, emotionally suffer. The way people have put it is, I will be in emotional pain. I'll be in agony. To let yourself notice that and be worried about it. If I said no to that type of food for the rest of my life, it would be terrible. First question, is that true? You would be deprived. You would suffer if you say no. Is that true? Can you absolutely know that that's true? An answer from your whole wise self. Even let the deprived one come in. Maybe it wants to say yes and scream yes. That will be true. A life lived without eating chocolate ever again is not a life worth living, right? Can you absolutely know that that's true, though? I like noticing, we don't eat dirt, and we're not deprived. Okay, so that's sort of an extreme example. Dirt is not a food. But there's many things that we don't consume and eat. There's food, and we never even thought about it. We don't eat the food on the halfway around the other side of the world, the meals that they make on a regular basis, we don't eat that, and we don't even know about it, and we don't suffer at all. We've never tasted that, and it's completely fine. It's just good to notice that may be sort of an obvious example, but I personally can't know it's absolutely true that if I say no, I'll suffer. How do you react when you believe that if you say no, you will suffer, you will be deprived, it won't work, you'll have emotional pain? How do you react when you think that's true? You eat. You don't ever eliminate that. You try to wait a little while and then go ahead and eat. Or you have all these pictures and images in your mind about the future and how you will be suffering later when that loss happens. That this saying no thing that's going to go on is going to result in it getting worse than the dilemma you feel in the moment when you're saying no. There's the food, and you just have this picture of all this future suffering that's going to occur, right? I sure did. It's going to be awful. It's going to be awful. Who would you be without this thought? There's the question, the amazing, transformative question. Who would you be without this suffering story, this stressful story, and only this one thought, that you will be deprived? You will suffer if you say no, if you don't eat something, even for the rest of your life. Who will you be without that story? You just take a deep breath and notice and sit with it and experience what it's like to not believe that thought. You can have the thought, but if you didn't believe it was true, that you will be deprived and you'll suffer and it'll be horrible and it's not even worth living life unless you can eat that thing sometimes. And I'm not saying not to eat it. Who knows? I seem to have in my palette of menu, or in my world, it probably looks significantly healthier from a nutrition standpoint than it did even 15 years ago, 20 years ago. There's a lot of green things and a lot of fruits and vegetables. That's just progressively changed and moved and gotten more and more over time. But I'm not really sure I'm controlling that. I don't know if I compared what I eat to what I eat now to what I eat then, I would know how exactly that happened. Except for I'm interested in peace. And I do notice that if I eliminate something, it's not the end of the world. I haven't wound up suffering. I'm not even working so much on eliminating it. I just take the edge off. I like the symbol or the experience of imagining, the battles you get in with a certain type of food that we're talking about here. It's like you're tugging on a rope. You're having a tug of war or an outright war. Everyone's got their firearms and, you're going to battle for will about it. And this, who you'd be without the thought, the way I see it is if I let go of my side of the rope, or I drop my weapons, I even drop to the ground and lie down. I just relax deeply and trust this moment. I notice in this moment when I say no and I'm not eating, I am not suffering. I could notice more and more that the moments of not eating were not filled with suffering. They're just quiet and silent, and I don't have to be in the activity of eating in order to calm down. If I wait, I can actually calm down all alone, all by myself. Who would I be without the story? Saying no means I am deprived, I'm going to suffer, it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, like impossible to handle, intolerable. The wording gets very extreme. It might not be comfortable. I remember long ago when I quit smoking, and I've used this analogy quite a bit because it's like quitting smoking is completely quitting something, right? There is no more smoking ever. And just when a thought would come or a craving or an interest in that, I just would move, like step away from it, just step away from it. And it slowly fell away. There is never, ever, hardly a thought ever in my life these days. It's been many years since I quit smoking about smoking. or wanting to smoke or being interested in smoking or even entertaining the idea of smoking. It just doesn't even exist. Why couldn't the same thing happen around a food craving? You're just relaxing the whole thing, letting that food be in the world without concern about it. And then finally, you can turn the thought around. Last step of the work. I will be deprived if I say no. I will not be deprived if I say no. I will not be deprived. I will be nourished. What's the opposite of deprivation for you? Supported, cared for, loved. I will feel an infusion of relaxation or peace, support for myself in this world. Not deprivation, but instead incoming, nurturing, the opposite if I say no. Could that be just as true? We're not saying you were wrong to have the thought in the first place, but could that not be just as true or truer? What if it is another turnaround? My thinking will be deprived if I say no. It won't get to have all that violent entertainment drama, like dramatic thought towards myself and towards food and towards this cycle. None of that will happen if I say no. So my thinking will be deprived. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Beautiful to hold that turnaround, just see the truth of how that could be just as possible. I don't feel deprived at all because I don't smoke now. I don't feel deprived anymore at all because I don't binge. Ever. I never feel deprived because I don't binge. There may be something else that you want that's really important, like expressing your anger or making a request or being clear and honest about who you are and what you want in a certain moment. Maybe those things need to come out. Maybe something else needs to come forward so that this deprivation isn't so intense and so wild and mixed up and enmeshed in a way with food and eating and the cycle of food and eating and wanting to escape from what is and your feelings. So you can just see, how would saying no support me? And maybe there's saying no in other areas of your life that would also be extremely supportive and not full of deprivation. What would you like to say no to in your life? And if you think you can't, maybe that's worthy of questioning. Any stressful thought is worth taking through the inquiry process and discovering your own answers for yourself. Any stressful thought, no matter how true it seems. So who would you be without the story of deprivation being a horrible, god-awful thing to experience and that you'll never get over it and that the suffering will become worse? What a relief. I'd say the suffering can die down like a wave crashing on the sand and loosen its ways, and you may be able to find that saying no is the most nurturing and wonderful thing you've ever done in your life. Take care, everybody. Lots of love.